Morning, everyone. All right, so welcome everybody to the October um, NMA monthly musings. Um, October is Family History Month and Archives Month, so I thought it would be fitting this week or this month to talk about um, research questions and how we answer research questions. Here at AHSGR, we've been doing a lot of work to kind of um, keep better tracking of things and make it more professionalized. And a big driver of that has been Amber, our research coordinator. So Amber came to us, gosh, a year ago, a little over a year ago. And she started out part-time, but she was so amazing and awesome that we made her full-time. And we're really lucky to have her here. So I'm going to turn it over to Amber and let her get started.
All right, thank you, Karen. I'm going to share my screen and then let me know if there are any technical issues, like if I'm hard to hear or anything like that. All right. Can everybody see my screen? Okay, perfect. All right, hello. Like Karen said, I'm Amber. I'm the Archival Research Coordinator with AHSGR. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of what our research service process looks like and some of the improvements that we've made with it in the time that I've been here. Right. So first off, just hello. Okay, so our contents. The general topics we're going to hit on is who are AHSGR? What are our resources? What do our research services and process look like? What were the problems and solutions that we came up regarding this process? And what did the improvements look like and where are we going for the future? Okay, so first off, what is AHSGR? AHSGR stands for the American Historical Society of Germans from Russia, and I'm sure a lot of you are probably familiar with that in the history. But just as a little introduction, our mission is to discover, collect, preserve, and share the history, cultural heritage, and genealogical legacy of the German settlers of the Russian Empire. And here is our little campus, an aerial shot of that there. Okay, and then who are our research team? So our research team mainly consists of our archivist, Karen Kier, and then me, the archival research coordinator. It's kind of a two-person team at the moment, and I am very happy with the work that we've been doing. Okay, so what resources do we have that kind of necessitates research services? So our resources. We've got the Emma Schwabenlane Haynes Library, which with our estimates has over 7,000 books and manuscripts, We also have a large collection of surname charts and other charts, several maps. We've got microfilm, microfiche, family files, village files, all of that good material. We also have an archive with over 7,200 linear feet, over 300 unique collections, and several thousands of master tips that are growing. And then we also have our museum collection with over 2,400 items. Okay, our research services and process. So with all of these great stuff, why do we need research services? Well, one of the main reasons is that despite being located in Lincoln, Nebraska, just off of I-80, it's not really a viable option for a lot of our members or patrons to be able to make it down or make it down as frequently as they would like. So we've got lots of German Russians now all over the United States and in other countries as well. And that includes large populations in Kansas, the Dakotas, everywhere. And a lot of them just can't make it down. Another reason is that despite demand, not all of our records can be published online. So this could be for copyright reasons. This could be for just labor reasons. Like there's so many things that would need to be digitized and we don't necessarily have all the staff to get it on immediately. But really the main reason is that those most used records, the census records, are the translations that is, are protected by copyright, and we just can't ethically or legally just post those all online. Another reason is that, let's say we could do that, we could post all of our records online, then there really wouldn't be any incentive to interact with the staff or the museum physically. So our board members are constantly thinking of ways for us to kind of sustain the organization. And one of their thoughts is, can we monetize our collection in some way? So that's kind of brewing in the back of their mind as well. And then another motive is that some researchers, regardless of if they can make it in or not, just don't want to research. Like they want the information, but they're not really interested in doing the research themselves, and they're okay with just paying somebody and getting the records that they want and then putting it into their tree or whatever maybe. All right, so we have the need for requests. We have the need for services in these ways. So how do people submit the requests? The main way that we receive requests, and really the preferred way, is for people to fill out our research request form on our website. And this is a phenomenal way to do things. It is a great form, and people can go into the website and navigate through the menu, just click this little button, click the research request form, and then just fill in all the slots and submit it. It's kind of similar to a Google form or just any other web-based form. And that has all of these different sections that they fill out and required sections. And then that just submits a copy of their response to our email and to me or Karen or the librarian email, one of those. This is just a great way to organize things because, if you're getting a lot of verbal requests or someone saying, hey, can you do this research for me? It's not very written in stone. There's a lot of issues with that. So this just provides a very uniform way to receive requests. It all has the same information. So, everybody's filling out the required bits in the same order, and it just makes it a lot easier for the subsequent steps. And then rarely for those individuals who just really aren't comfortable using the internet, and we do have a portion of our members that kind of fall into that category, I will accept requests over the phone, and I'll kind of just ask them the same things on the form and then just manually type that in myself. But that's quite rare. All right, and then here is just the basic outline of how the research service process steps look. So first, like I said, they'll submit that request via the avenues that I mentioned. And we ask that they are as detailed as possible to avoid redundant work. And we also ask that they limit to one individual or sometimes one family line. It depends on the nature of what they're looking for and what their monetary limit is. Next, and then that will shoot an email to me, and I will be able to put that into our tracking system, which I have a subsequent slides about. Second step, research plan. So I'll go into the rationale behind this later on as well. But the next step is going to be that the researcher and the interested party, they've communicated most often through email correspondence, and then they are going to agree on a research plan. And this is going to outline the requester's contact information, what they're looking for in writing, and then a big chunk of that is dedicated to what records or what resources are going to be checked. That way, both parties are solidly agreeing upon in writing, okay, what is going to be done with this money? What is the best way for the researcher to focus on this request? And then the third step, which I'll also go into the rationale behind, is that the interested party, the person submitting the request, is going to pay a base fee as a deposit. And this deposit is going to hold their place in line. It's going to encourage follow-up because they already have a little bit of money invested in this request. And it's also going to help ensure further that both parties are on the same page, because it's that monetary way of saying, okay, yep, I agreed on the research plan and I agree on following through with this research request. All right, the fourth step is going to be just the research. So this is pretty straightforward, especially for those of you familiar with research. You just conduct the research, you look at the records you said you were going to look at in the research report. If you think of something else as you're going, you can email them and say, hey, is this okay? Can I add this to the research process? I thought of this new record, or something came up during my research that, maybe there's a different location that came up relating to a certain person. Can I check materials for that place? And then you'll kind of, modify the plan depending on how the request goes, what the person is interested in, and so on and so forth. And then the fifth step, you'll finalize. So you'll basically gather all of your materials, you'll gather your report, anything that you're going to send to them, you're going to say, here's what I have gathered without sending them the full thing. And then you're going to say, here's an invoice. These things on the invoice correspond with what I found. So let's say I'm sending them 5 records. There's a photocopy fee for 5 records. And then this is how long the research took. This is what you're being charged for the base fee, for the hourly, all of that. They'll pay the invoice and they'll pay the online order. And once that is processed on our side, because sometimes the payment will fail, depending on, their card or just internet issues. Once that payment is processed and finalized, then you can send them all the materials, and then more often than not, everybody's happy and they might submit another request. All right, so problems and solutions. This is kind of little things that came up when I first started, and then that I noticed as I was going through this research process. What roadblocks am I running into? What things am I running into consistently that might need to be improved? And then our ways of addressing those. All right, so Erfahrung macht klug. That is a German-Russian phrase that just means experience makes us wise. So there are some things that I wasn't able to anticipate just going into and doing it. But through the experience of doing the research process, we were able to make some great improvements. So in no particular order of most pressing to least pressing or anything like that, here's just a list of problems I noticed and the ways we address that. So number 1, this happened not frequently enough that it was every request, but enough that I noticed, okay, this needs to be addressed. So one problem was that research would be conducted for individuals who ended up never paying or never responding again. So they just kind of went missing. And it wasn't necessarily the case that I conducted a bunch of research and sent it to them and then they didn't pay. It was more like they submitted their request and they were corresponding with me, seeming that they were still interested. And then I completed the work, sent them the invoice, and then I never heard anything back for them. So whether it was that they didn't want to pay or something happened to them. I don't know, but it needed to be addressed because it wasn't necessarily fair for anybody involved. It wasn't fair for the researcher to conduct a bunch of research and spend time on something that didn't really end up in a successful completion. And it also wasn't fair to everybody else in the queue who could have had their request been worked on. And, it just needed to be addressed. So one of the ways we address that is we implemented the base fee being paid upfront as a deposit. And I think that this has drastically encouraged follow through because I can't think of a time where after we changed this process, there hasn't been any like ghosting. Nobody has submitted a request and paid the base fee and then never got back to me. That hasn't happened. So it really does encourage follow through. And I'm very, very happy with the way we've addressed that. All right, so the second thing I noticed is how I was doing the research report previously was based off of the example reports that were left with me from previous employees. And I noticed that, at least to me, for the rates that we were charging, it didn't feel very official. And it was also a little bit difficult because we were using Microsoft Word, which there's nothing necessarily wrong with it. It just didn't feel super official. And it wasn't very easy to insert a lot of these documents and images into the record in a way that I liked. So our solution was to just create PDFs with Adobe InDesign, which is a great software. And it is so much easier to insert images or PDFs of other documents into the report and then format the text around it in the exact way that you want. It's also a lot easier to annotate documents with Adobe Illustrator. So I had someone saying, I can't read this document in German. I'm sure that you sent me something and I see that you wrote the translation in the report, but what is all this saying? Like, where are these words? Because they couldn't read that form of cursive. So I took that same document and I just annotated it in English and connected the annotation to each section so she could see where I'm getting each of these words from the translation. And she really appreciated that. And if I were to try to do something in Word, I'm sure it's possible, but it would have been a lot more frustrating. So just for the amount that we do charge for the services, I was also really happy because I was thinking about what would I want to receive as a researcher. And it's just so much easier for me to create that style of report in line with our branding guidelines and aesthetically attractive and easy to read in this new software. Okay, another thing we noticed is as part of our strategic plan, we really wanted to focus on expanding our partnerships and trying to get more general community engagement. So of course, we want to target people who have German-Russian connections, but we also wanted to think of ways that we could be more of use to the general public, like here in Lincoln, around our neighborhood, and that kind of thing. And obviously, we're always seeking to improve our access to records in any form that we can related to German-Russian history. So one of our solutions for that was to just become a Family Search affiliate library. This was a great way to expand the amount of record access we have because there's more record access at an affiliate library compared to just a general Family Search account. And because Family Search is more generally genealogy focused, it's not necessarily just a German-Russian genealogy website. So this could attract more general researchers, or let's say we get a lot of groups of people coming down. Some people are much more interested in doing genealogy in our library than other people in the group. So this could be a way for, let's say they're a spouse who doesn't have German-Russian ancestry. That happens quite frequently, but they're still kind of interested in genealogy. They can just get on the Family Search workstation and do a little bit of their own genealogy there while their spouse is working on German-Russian census records or whatever. So that was a great way to address that. And we have had people use the workstation, and there were people using the workstation just yesterday for Family Search, which was exciting. All right, so another thing we noticed, there wasn't necessarily a consistent filing system for past research. So I noticed that different employees had kind of filed research requests differently, but generally they had these very thick folders with several page reports and then photocopies of records that we have in our library or things that they've printed off. And each request would have these thick folders stacked up on their desk, which is fine if that's what you're used to and that's what you want. But we thought, let's take our filing and record keeping more to a digital route. And if you think about it, it is a little bit redundant to do a bunch of photocopies of the same census record over and over again for different requests when that's something that you already have in your archive or your library. It just doesn't make a lot of sense because it is taking up a lot of space and paper and ink when you could just do a scan of that and have that on your digital server or wherever you're hosting your files. So our solution to that was, of course, we moved to a digital filing system. And I'll get into how we track that. But also there is a section on my computer where I do keep those research requests. And those are backed up and accessible for other employees. So let's say somebody, I'm not available and somebody calls about a research request that happened in the past. They could be able to navigate to that research request file that I've created, go into the person and check the documents, the research report that I made, and all of that. So it just makes it a lot easier. Nobody's having to rummage through your desk for a folder of a bunch of redundant papers. Okay, and then another way we track this is with Trello. So Trello is an add-in of Microsoft Teams. And basically what happens is, like I said, someone will fill in that research form at any time of day, and then I will get sent a copy of their responses via email. We do use Outlook since we have the Microsoft kind of management system, but hypothetically, this could work with a lot of different types of setups. And then Trello is just kind of a task or, system management software. So the way they have it set up is you have boards and then you have cards in your board. This particular board for the research and reference questions is a shared board. So we have somebody who moderates it, and then they can invite other team members to contribute to the board or view the board, whatever settings that they would like. You can have different sections of the board for different types of cards. And then all you have to do is create a card, and then all of the cards will show in the order that you specify. There's a lot of ways that you would be able to customize this to whatever your particular process is or the types of things that you want to track. But I just wanted to highlight a couple of those modifications. So the first one is labels. You can just create whatever label you want. We have a label for completed. We have a label for base fee paid or paid in full to kind of track where we're at in the process of payment. We also have labels for, are they a member? Are they a non-member? That helps you just keep that in mind without having to go into the card and read all of the details. I have one for on deck. So maybe I had a research request that I was currently in progress, but I have someone who's coming up. And that just helps me, I like to try to keep my requesters informed as much as possible. So if somebody's on deck and they're asking, hey, where are you at in the process? I can say, you are next up in the queue, don't worry. And then I'll let you know when I start. And then I'll get that that research plan sent to you. So it's just a good way to track all of those little details without having to open up the card fully. You can also, like I said, you can sort them depending on what type of card you're tracking. So maybe you have different types of research or different types of requests. So if somebody is looking for just a photo, that can go in its own board. Or if somebody is wanting really, really in-depth research, that can go in its own board. For the ones that are completed, you can move those cards from one to another, and then you'll know, okay, that's completed, I won't have to worry about it. You can go through and count how many were completed in the month. It's just a really easy way to keep track of everything and to do stats. So in the card itself, and this is just a little section of how it looks, you do have the ability to insert attachments. So even though I have folders on my actual desktop or on our servers with what I'm working on, it also helps to kind of attach these to the card. And it's just an easier way to see how many things I've got working on, or if somebody else wants to check the card and see the types of attachments that I've included in my report. It just makes everything easier. And then you also have this little activity section down here where you can comment. It will show the date of your comment. You can say, this person called to check in on their card this date at this time. Just another way to track all those little details. And then here I have WooCommerce. WooCommerce is how we do our orders. And I do have to manually make orders depending on the type of research request I'm doing. So there is a way for me to track the types of charges in WooCommerce, but I didn't put a picture of that here. But here, if you can see, I did attach the invoice that I did generate in WooCommerce here, and it has the order number and everything. So that way somebody can link up, like, for example, if I'm not here, one of our other team members can say, oh, I need to go in and mark this order as completed because they paid today, even though she's not here. And I know that this order goes with this card, that type of thing. All right, another thing that I noticed, people may want research done, but they might ask for too many things at once, and it just kind of leads to it being really difficult to do the research. So a lot of you might be familiar with this. You get people who are avid genealogists, or they're very interested in history, and because they're really excited, they'll come up and they'll just info dump you all of these things at once. And like, let's say they want to know where this person came from in Germany before they came to Russia, but they also want to know the maiden name of one of their descendants' spouses, and it just gets it gets a little confusing. And we want to be able to do the best work we can, and the way to do that is to kind of break it down into pieces. So our solution to this is to have a very clear section on the research request form that says, let's limit this to one surname or one individual at a time. And of course, you know, if you have somebody marrying someone, then technically, I guess that's two surnames, but in a way, it's one individual or one surname at a time. And sometimes we do also get people wanting to track a particular family and surname back as far as possible, but that also still counts as one surname. So it just helps to kind of organize the requests. So sometimes I'll get people asking for things, and it kind of ends up being more like 3 different questions. And so then I'll ask them, okay, let's narrow it down, and maybe this is 3 different requests. It just makes it a lot easier to be able to complete that question as fully as possible and as best as possible. Okay, another thing I noticed, folks may want to do their own research, but they just need particular access to a certain type of record. So it's in that category of people who maybe can't make it down in person, but they're very independent. They know what record they want. They just can't physically access that. So our solution is basically call this a reference request. And if it only takes a few minutes, like maybe 2 or 3 or 5, the base fee can be waived, but they still need to pay for copies and that kind of thing. So typically that base fee will include 30 minutes of research. So if it takes 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, then that's a base fee. But if it's really just, I know the exact book and the exact page, can you just make a photocopy of it? It'll just be a reference request for the copy fee. I do really like this solution because I think it maybe would scare people away a little bit if they had to pay $30 for just one piece of paper and they already did all the research to know, you know, what exact thing they want. And the nice thing about this is I do think it really has improved maybe that connection between the researcher and the person asking for the research, because I have gotten people that have really praise the way that we do this, in particular for these EWZ records. And they say it was very, very difficult to get in contact with researchers at the National Archives and to request these EWZ records. They knew the exact person and the exact application number that they wanted, but it was just very expensive and difficult for them to be able to get get those records. And they said, oh, because you made it so much easier and clearer, I think I'm going to come back to you in the future when I have more questions on this German-Russian line. So I think it just strengthens our relationships and sets a really positive message that it's easier to work with us than you might think. It's easier to work with us than maybe some other organizations. Okay, another thing I noticed is there have been, and very, very few, but there have been a few researchers where maybe they were unhappy with the services provided. So not necessarily the way the services were conducted, but the results. So in genealogical research, a lot of you may know, you don't always find what you're looking for. So sometimes you'll look and look and look for hours, and for whatever reason, that information or that record, maybe it just doesn't exist, or maybe you're just going about it the wrong way, and it's not necessarily fruitful. So what can we do about this? What can we do to prevent people from being unhappy with the research that we provide them, knowing that this is kind of an inevitable end for a lot of genealogical questions? Our solution to this was the research plan must be agreed upon and preferably in writing prior to our services. And the research plan also does state very clearly that the cost is for the service rendered. So the person physically taking time out of their day and going through all these records, which in some cases is very difficult. And it's also kind of a specialized service, particularly with reading those older handwritten documents, regardless of how satisfactory the actual results in the records are. And then we also have down here, please indicate monetary and temporal limits. So this is also just to make sure everybody's on the same page. Somebody has a monetary limit that they don't want to go over. And then based on that based on that monetary limit, we can calculate a time limit. So we're not spending more time than they're able to pay on a certain request. And then we also have an estimated time of the request, which isn't necessarily the turnaround time, because the actual research time is not necessarily going to include me starting and stopping on other tasks and the other things that happen in a workday, that in the weekends and all that kind of stuff. But that just makes sure that everybody in writing can see, okay, this is how much it's going to be for the base fee, for the research time. This is how much photocopies cost. And sometimes we might not like that we only find one record that suggests a different birth date than we had our heart set on, or whatever the case may be. All right, and then another thing, our old research service pricing schedule did not necessarily help to sustain membership. So people could, as non-members, easily request research services or copies of records, and then they never had a need to interact with us, the staff, the museum, or the organization in any other way. They had their 1 or 2 photocopies of a census they couldn't get their hands on, and then they never really needed to join part of the larger community. And for some people, that's really not a need, but as an organization, we do want to try to incentivize sustaining a membership and sustaining a community, because in a roundabout way, that actually gives back to both members and non-members. It sustains our ability to house all of these specialized records. So our new fee schedule incentivizes membership. So in other words, basically, it's a better deal to become a member and save on those research fees, and then also have the added benefits of being a member, which in the long term sustains the organization. And I think I have a slide, outlining that pricing table. So the base fee for members is going to be $30, and then for non-members, it's $90. For the hourly, it's 40 and 100. And if you notice, that's a $60 difference on both, which that $60 is the price of a standard membership. So it's basically saying, if you're going to have to pay that extra $60 anyway, you might as well just become a member, get access to our online resources, our videos, get in our database so other people can find you if you're interested in the same family line of research, all of that, and then you still get your research. It just really helps to sustain that organization, to build community, and it just makes more sense. All right, so those were a bunch of different problems and solutions regarding the research services. So let's see the improvements and then maybe talk a little bit about the future. So the new research report generally looks like this. We've got the cover, we've got all these contents, and then here is the thumbnail. So the main way I typically like to do these: cover, title page has got information about me and when it was completed. We've got a table of contents that helps you sort through the PDF. We summarize what was asked for and what was agreed upon in the research plan. We state the question very clearly, the goal of the plan, and then we've got all these content pages and, of course, citations, everything like that. We also have the research plan. This is the first page of it. It outlines the research question in very clear writing. It says what type of genealogical research question this is, if it's biographical, etc. We summarize anything they give to us about a particular individual that we're researching, just to make sure we're all on the same page with birth and death dates and everything like that. This is more specialized, but we have what region or village their person is from, if that applies. And then we've also got in the back, we've got all of that other stuff. You know, we're agreeing upon these records being checked. This is our time limit. This is our monetary limit. Here is our requester's contact information. That's good to have as well. And then our research report also will incorporate any of those documents in full form that we might be sending along with them. So either in the report itself or as an attachment in the email that I send along with the report. Because sometimes I like to crop out the most important information of a record and put in and then have text about it. But I also want them to see that full unedited version of the document as well. And like I said at the beginning, when I went through that process timeline, you'll see that all of those little solutions that I mentioned to the problems were incorporated in that new process. So, you know, you've got the base fee, you have the research form, and all of that. Okay, so I've got a little bit of statistics here. This is for both in-person researchers and research requests, and then about how much money has come from different avenues from that. So we only have the partial data from 2022. We had 92 in-person researchers, and then we had 76 researcher reference requests from September to December. And then in total of research related fees that I could find, we had $1,215.75 that came in through that. Let's see. Okay, for 2023, and this is for the whole year, we had about 137 in-person researchers and about 281 research requests. So of course, you know, that was only partial year for 2022, but that gives you maybe a baseline for the year of requests. And then we had about $3,054 come from copy fees and research fees. The research fees are all kind of lumped together in the way we track that in WooCommerce, but and I also added the copy fees because more often than not, those are also research related. And then for 2024, we can kind of give you kind of our projected numbers. This was done, I did this part quite early on, so it only goes up to October 1st. We also had 137 in-person researchers, and we had a total of 300 reference requests. So it's already more than the entire year of 2022. And I also noticed that a lot of the research requests that we were getting this year were repeated people. So either they had one early in the year and then in the summer they submitted another one, or they submitted one in 2022, or sorry, 2023, and then this year said, okay, I'm continuing on and I'm going to submit another request. And more often than not, it's from the same general family line. And then right now we have about $1,500, which, if you're acute on the math there, is a little bit less than last year, but I am pretty confident that we're going to get at least the same or maybe more than last year. And right now I'm currently working on a couple different pretty large requests. So I'm pretty confident with that. So even though we don't have maybe like 5 years to say, this is how much we've improved, we only have those like kind of in some ways partial statistics, you can already see a pretty drastic improvement of at least the volume. And if we're continuously getting more requests, and specifically more requests from the same individuals, it tells us that we're doing something right, because nobody's going to submit a request if they don't like what we're doing. So I'm very, very confident with all of that and the improvements we've made. And like I said, this is kind of just from my perspective, but we haven't had the same issues. I haven't had people just deciding to not respond anymore, just the way that we've done it. And I also have gotten a lot of very, very positive feedback. So these are just two examples, but somebody actually mailed me a physical card based off of one of the requests that I did for her. And then I get plenty of emails just saying, you know what, we didn't find what we wanted, but I love the quality of what you did and how clear the process was, and that we were always on the same page. Or, thank you so much, you just broke through a brick wall that I couldn't solve since the 1990s. So whether it's successful or not, like successful in terms of if they found the exact genealogy that they wanted, people are just so much more happy with how clear these steps are. And I also wanted to talk about the types of things that you could implement if you wanted to implement research services or improve your own research services. So I understand that it's not necessarily accessible, like the certain software that I mentioned, it might not, for whatever reason, be accessible for you, but there are probably plenty of free alternatives or just other alternatives that work with your current system. And in any case, you could also just do that handwritten tracking in the same way that we do the Trello tracking. Like whatever works for you, you could implement that. The other thing I wanted to mention that I think I highly encourage people to pursue is, if you have the capability for it, if you have, let's say, a microfilm workstation with a computer or something like that, definitely look into becoming a Family Search affiliate library, because this was an incredibly easy process and it was free. Really, the only thing that you need to have is a static IP address and a dedicated workstation that the public would be able to access Family Search from. So that alone is great. And then you'll come up on the Family Search affiliate map. So they've got a great map of their physical locations, their affiliate libraries, and then also their Family Search centers. It's just another way to put you on the map for your local community or anyone who's passing through. Those are my biggest things that I say would be the easiest to implement. And then the other thing I would just encourage is, make sure as much as possible you can be on the same page with the people you're working with, and preferably in writing. It just makes it so much easier for everyone involved. I know many people were used to just going by word of mouth, like, hey, can you just do this research for me? And you just want to avoid those moments of tension where you give them a baptismal document and they are upset because the baby was born before the marriage date that you had or whatever. Like, that specifically hasn't happened to me, but I have heard other genealogists running into issues like that. So it's just to make sure everybody is happy. And I am very proud with the work that we've done to professionalize this research service. And I think it gives us a great opportunity to grow in the future and establish ourselves as a professional genealogy focused society. And we have all these great records for people. It would be a shame if they couldn't access them in some way, even if they couldn't come in person. All right, so those are my main points, and I'm definitely open for any questions.
I was going to say that using something like Trello, these task um, management systems, there's lots of them out there. At History
Mhm.
Nebraska, that we use Miser Task, which has a free version. Um, but I really appreciate that should Amber be out a day, I can, and somebody calls and asks for an update, I can really quickly and easily say right where she's at.
Mhm.
And the same with my requests too, although I sometimes forget to put stuff in there. But Amber does not. So I really appreciate being having that really at my fingertips saying, hey, yep, Amber's working on this. It looks like you're at this stage and be patient. So
Mhm.
or
The
you're
other
this far down in the queue, she'll probably get to you in a week or 2 weeks.
right. The other thing I will point out is um, there are also both free and paid add-ons to these types of systems where you could have like a timer or something and you set the timer and you track how much you've spent on a particular task. I have played around with those. Sometimes it doesn't necessarily work for me, but that is definitely something you can also consider. Just helps you, like, whether you're doing research requests where you need to know how much time you're spending to generate a certain um, price, or you just want to know where am I at and how much I'm spending on my task. That's a great option. The only thing I had issue with that is sometimes I would start the timer and then I would get distracted by a phone call or someone would come in person and then my timer had been running. So honestly, I kind of just take handwritten notes of, okay, I started at this time and here's when I stopped as best as I can. So that's something to consider as well.
This is Tammy, and I have a question.
Yes.
And do you have like open things you can come in, as you said, in person? Is that an appointment wise, or is it kind of spur of the moment, come in type thing, or what's your time schedules?
We
Yeah,
encourage appointments.
we encourage appointments. Although I will say we probably have as many walk-ins as appointments, if not more. So yeah, that's part of the whole. That's why something like Trello is great because I can just put all of my things on that card as I get to them. And if somebody walks in at that moment, I had already put my record or PDF or whatever in there, and I can just pick back up exactly where I left off. And I don't have to go through all these different tabs because usually when somebody comes in, then I have all these other records open at the same time, or I have to clear the library catalog for something else. And yeah, so it just really makes it easier to work on a particular task. And then if you have to put that aside, you can close the card, open another card, or whatever you need to do.
Yeah.
And our
And then on your records, do you have like general things that you can look at if you come in versus only reference materials?
So we have a full museum, and yeah, and then but yeah, they also have access to the library, the surname charts, maps, the family search computer, microfilm, um, any other type of artifact as well.
Those, those are accessible as the person walks in, that type of thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely, the physical records.
Okay.
We also, when we do our conventions, which we just came back from Oklahoma, and we'll be in Hayes, Kansas in 2026. We actually pack up about a quarter of our research materials in a 15-foot U-Haul truck and take it to our conventions for people to do research at our conventions, which
Mhm.
is fun.
Another thing I thought of when you mentioned that is we also made sure that with this research request form, they get an automatic response back sent to their email, the one that they put in the form, and it will tell them approximately how long the turnaround is going to be. And if we're coming up on something like convention, where honestly it's just really difficult to do the research requests on top of packing up and physically being at convention, we can adjust that 6 to 8 weeks or whatever time frame we estimate, depending on our schedule as well. And that's just another way to keep people in the loop.
One more thing about the form, the online form, is that it is not only can you make a research request, you can also make an appointment as well. So it has a drop-down option that changes the questions.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got a couple of questions. They're kind of interrelated. So let's say you get a request and then you start and you negotiate everything or whatever. Or do you do any sort of like a preliminary glance at things saying, okay, we might have something or whatever. But let's say you start getting into a research request, and you find out that somebody has already done a lot of the research. I mean, does that change how? Because I've had, I have family history files, and I all of a sudden, oh, you know what? This person married this person. I have a file on that person. So does that change how you do things, or what you give them, or change the fee or whatever? I mean, does it change anything if you've run into research that's already been done and collected?
Right. I would say, like, hypothetically, yes. So I wouldn't redo research that I have and then charge them more than they need to. But usually in that research plan, I've already kind of accounted for example, we have family files. We also have a file card index to those files. So I could say, I'm going to check that index. And if there's somebody in there, then I'm going to pull the research. So it's kind of more like upfront agreed upon in the plan. And based now that I've had a lot more experience doing this as well, I have a much better sense of what types of requests I will be able to answer with the records available. So I mostly mark those records on the research plan and say, there wasn't even a file card. Like I can check in like 2 seconds. There wasn't even a file card on anyone with this surname. So there probably isn't already research done. And then if I know the region too, let's say it's one of the more obscure villages, I know we're not going to have census records or file records on that family anyway. I'll also put that on the research plan. Like there's a spot for census, and I can do a little comment on it and say there is no census record for this village, or for the years that we're looking at, there's no census, that type of thing. And that also keeps them informed. Okay, how likely is it that this question is going to be answered? Sometimes I will be really upfront with people and say, honestly, I don't think we have any records, but I can still check this, this, and this if you want to. And sometimes they'll say, no, how about we do a different question? Or yes, I still want you to check. So there is a little bit of flexibility, but we still try to agree upfront what types of information. And then I also mentioned, for example, let's say I'm going through it and I'm looking at these records for a particular village, and I see so and so family moved from this village, and the research didn't say, or the requester didn't say anything about that village originally. I can email them and say, is it okay if I also check these additional records that I think are going to be very pertinent to this request? And more often than not, they'll say, yeah, as long as you're not going over time, that type of thing.
And my second question then sort of relates to, somebody's done all of their work and then they donate, their family history or whatever. Is it a donation? Do you accept them that if they put, I don't want to say restrictions, but they say, okay, I don't want you to copy this, or anybody can have access to it. I mean, or do you just say, just take it as is or whatever? Do you understand
I
what
will
I'm
say,
saying?
Yeah, I think I let Karen answer part of this, but I will say in terms of the research request, for example, something that really comes up is we have these surname charts that were created by a researcher who was had access to the archives in Russia, especially in the 90s. And some of those charts were donated to us with restrictions that they can't be copied in any form. So I wouldn't necessarily send them a copy of that chart, but I could say, this chart confirms that this person was married to this person. And it's kind of up to them to be like, okay, that's the source. They can't necessarily see it, but we can go from there.
Okay. Is there any other questions?
All right, this is Kevin. I have a question.
Yes.
Is the brand manual that you referred to toward the beginning of your talk here, is that an internal document?
Yes. It just lays out our like the colors that we use, and the fonts that we use, and examples of the logos we have for different purposes, things like that. But if you're interested in seeing ours so you can create your own, I'd be happy to send it to you. It's how we stay consistent across all the departments with a similar image.
Right. So this is Linda Buck and Emma Cook, and great presentation, by the way. I should be a member. I'm sorry, I'm not a member. I need to be. Um, the brand management book, can you maybe post a link in the when you post the presentation?
So I would have to see if I can get permission to do that because it is an
Okay.
internal document. But I can we should be able. I'll just double check with our marketing people and we can maybe do that.
Okay, yeah, because I know here we are working on something like that. It would be helpful to have some a guideline to go by.
Sure. It is pretty helpful for us to all be on the same page when it comes to when to use certain logos, what colors to use, and things like that. Do we have any other questions? Well, thank you. Amber did an awesome job as always. Feel free to reach out to either Amber or I if you have any other questions. We'd be happy to share sample documents of her reports or anything else. I did want to mention that November's monthly musing is going to be on creating a photo station for photographing objects by Aaron Hauser at Saunders County Historical Society. They received a Nebraska State Historical Society Foundation grant to purchase the equipment. So she's going to talk about that process and all that fun stuff. And then in December, the Ford Center's manager, Vonda Shaw, is going to talk about what Ford Center, the Ford Conservation Center in Omaha, can do for small museums, and also kind of explain the process of submitting something for treatment and create how to create condition reports. I have started to fill out the 2025 calendar. January is going to be about integrated pest management. So we're going to talk about bugs with Jessica Noyd at Hastings. And in February, we're going to be talking about creating a successful breakout storage breakout proposal with the MPMA program manager, John Woodward. And then the rest of the calendar is open. So if anybody has any ideas, suggestions, or would like to give a monthly musing, give me contact me and we'll set you up, okay? And again, this recording will be on and all the other monthly musings are on the NMA website under the monthly musing tab. It's also on our YouTube channel as well. So thank you all. It was great seeing you today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, everybody.